First now, President Trump firing back and once again denying that he knew in advance about the infamous Trump Tower meeting in June 2016. The president's latest denial in response to CNN's reporting. According to sources, former Trump fixer Michael Cohen says that then candidate Trump not only knew about that meeting, but also gave the green light to go ahead with it, and that he is willing to make that claim to special counsel Robert Mueller. The premise of the meeting was that the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton. Earlier today, the president tweeted the following, quote, "I did not know of the meeting with my son, Don Jr. Sounds to me like someone is trying to make up stories in order to get himself out of an unrelated jam. He even retained Bill and Crooked Hillary's lawyer." Let's bring in CNN White House correspondent Abby Phillips. So Abby, as this story broke, you've been speaking to people in the White House. What has been their reaction to this? Any nervousness behind the scenes?
Well, Jim, this morning you saw a president fairly upbeat on another subject about the economy. But behind the scenes, the president has been angry. He's been stewing about a series of stories that are quite negative about some potentially damaging legal troubles on the horizon. The Michael Cohen story continues to unfold, and the president has been watching, being briefed by his advisors, and has been growing angry, an administration official tells us. And the president yesterday, as he was traveling, watching some of that coverage on Air Force One, stewing about it. But we saw him really explode this morning on Twitter, complaining about the coverage, complaining that his former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, might have betrayed him and, as you just read, retained a lawyer who is working actively in a way that the president finds to be confrontational. He's also complained about reporters asking him questions about it. This week, the White House tried to punish a CNN reporter for doing that. Today, in the Rose Garden, the president gave a news event but did not take questions, even as reporters asked him about some of these very issues. The president clearly agitated about a series of stories that he thinks is stomping on otherwise good news on the economic front that he would much rather tout, Jim.
Yeah, not the first time he's complained about reporters or about former staff. The White House, as we were reporting earlier, had postponed the invitation for Vladimir Putin to visit Washington, but now today Putin says that he's in fact ready to come to the States and reciprocate with a visit to Moscow. I'm just curious, who is running this show? Is the White House in control of this? Is Vladimir Putin surprising the White House with these public statements?
Well, that's a really good question, Jim. I think one of the dynamics coming out of the Helsinki meeting was this feeling in the White House that Moscow was really the one running the show. They were putting out announcements about deals that the president supposedly made in his one-on-one meeting with Vladimir Putin. And so they announced by surprise on Twitter that they had invited Vladimir Putin to Washington. He sort of brushed back that invitation, saying maybe we can meet at the G20, prompting the White House to then turn around and rescind the invitation, saying they're going to push it back until the first of next year, of 2019. Now we're hearing from Moscow again that Putin is ready to meet either in Washington or in Moscow with President Trump. And Sarah Sanders issued a statement through the press pool this morning saying that President Trump looks forward to having President Putin in Washington after the first of the year, and he's open to visiting Moscow upon receiving a formal invitation. The White House here clearly trying to keep relations warm, but there is tension, obviously, in this back and forth about when a meeting can happen feasibly between these two leaders. And frankly, here in Washington, the prospect of Putin coming to the United States just before a midterm election was not warmly received. So the White House is having a little bit of trouble back home, making the environment something that would work for them in order to have a productive meeting with Putin in the United States, Jim.
I imagine that. A Democratic senator confirmed just yesterday that she was the subject of an unsuccessful attack from Russia in an election year. Abby Phillip at the White House, thanks very much. Today's Twitter denial from President Trump on the Michael Cohen news, just the latest in a long line of pushback from this president, his allies, and some changing stories we might note. CNN politics reporter and editor-at-large Chris Cillizza, he is here. So Chris, how did we get to this point? I mean, one thing that has struck me is there have been 1,000 different stories about this, from denials to different explanations to denials again. Not exactly a consistent line from the president or his team.
That's exactly right, Jim. And I think that's what makes it so hard to just say, oh, well, what Donald Trump has said must be right. So I don't think there's any way I can tell you how many times the Trump world has denied this. Better to show you. Let's play some sound of the many denials.
I am going to give a major speech on probably Monday of next week. and we're going to be discussing all of the things that have taken place with the Clintons. I think you're going to find it very informative and very, very interesting.
When did the president learn that that meeting had taken place?
I believe in the last couple of days, is my understanding.
One key point is, this is not a situation where the president was involved in this meeting, was not aware of the meeting, did not attend this meeting.
He didn't know about this meeting until a few days ago?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you tell your father anything about this?
No. It was such a nothing. There was nothing to tell. I mean, I wouldn't have even remembered it until you start scouring through the stuff. It was literally just a wasted 20 minutes, which was a shame.
Did you know at the time that they had the meeting?
No, I didn't know anything about the meeting.
But you know, you gave us.
It must have been a very unimportant meeting because I never even heard about it.
No one told you a word, nothing. I know we talked about this in the plane a little bit, but nobody.
No, nobody told me. I didn't know that. You know, it was a very unimportant. Sounded like a very unimportant meeting.
So we have that. But then, Jim, as you mentioned, we also have so many conflicting narratives here. I want to go through a few things of what was said and what we know now. Okay, Donald Trump Jr. first said that that meeting in June 2016 at Trump Tower was about a relatively obscure adoption law that Russia wanted done differently. Okay. President Trump dictated that initial response about adoption. That in and of itself is a changed narrative. Remember that Donald Trump and his lawyers said he had nothing to do with that statement that Don Jr. made to the New York Times when it was initially revealed. He didn't know anything about it. Well, it turns out not only did he know about it, he dictated it. We learned later, not from Don Jr., but from email exchanges that were released, that Don Jr. knew it wasn't first about adoptions. The reason the meeting happened between this group of Russians, Don Jr., Jared Kushner, and campaign chairman Paul Manafort, is because dirt was promised on Hillary Clinton by Rob Goldstone, a music promoter for a Russian artist that Trump and Trump Jr. had known. Finally, they've basically said, okay, well, our initial story, it wasn't right, but nothing happened. This meeting was a nothing burger, so no need to pay any attention to it. The problem, Jim, so much of what we initially were told from Don Jr., Donald Trump's lawyers about this meeting was not accurate. And now they're saying, well, that stuff might not have been accurate, but this time we're saying it is. Now we have Michael Cohen saying it isn't. Two unreliable narrators. Question is, who do we believe? Back to you, Jim.
Of course. And listen, part of their explanation apparently is that, well, if they had offered the dirt on Hillary Clinton, it would have been a worthwhile meeting. And I might have told my father about it. I mean, that's the thing. It's just hard to find the consistency there. Chris Lizza, thanks very much. Sure.